Alright, boys and girls, today we're going to go over ESO's races, and what makes this a little bit different is we've actually done some testing, so this isn't necessarily my opinion, it's more fact than opinion. But that being said, some of the races are pretty easy to quantify, and we won't spend as much time on those races as we will some of the others. Alright, let's get into the video, boys and girls. So let's get some of the less important or less interesting, I guess, out of the way. Now, Nord copped a nerf about a year or two ago, and ever since then, it's been a bit meh. It still can be pretty strong on a DK, because obviously that ult regen can be turned into resources, and that works out to be about 50 health, mag, and stam recovery if you're converting it with the DK passive. So for a DK, you can basically tack on about 50 recovery onto its stats. So overall, it's not necessarily the best class. If you really need resistances and you're really building a tank and you can't get those enough resistances from elsewhere, then it could definitely be an option, but that's the only real situation I would think about using a Nord. All right, next up, High Elf. Now, you might see the numbers here are a little bit wank, but that's because we've applied the basic buffs to them. So these are what you should expect to fundamentally see in-game. And that being said, 208 stamina mag recovery, 2k stats, and 335 weapon damage. High Elf can be a decent option if you have enough recovery in your build where you don't need kind of Imperial or Wood Elf's kind of level of recovery and you want a little bit of weapon damage. It's a good kind of in the middle class and isn't too damn bad at being mag or stam. Next up, Orc. Fundamentally, I can't really see a situation that you'd want to run Orc. You got 2k stats. The healing passive on this, considering that's going to proc all the time, is only 500 healing a second, so not really much healing. You get 258 weapon damage and the 10% sprint speed, in my opinion, is kind of overrated. You've already got a mass amount of speed when you're sprinting anyway, so like, yeah, it's nice, but it's not something that I would choose Orc over another race. Next up, Khajiit. Now, Khajiit's very situational. If you are trying to get that crit damage and you have a high crit chance, then Khajiit can be wonderful. But fundamentally, it's not going to be for a lot of people. If you are a Khajiit and you want to make the best of it, try and get your crit chance up to around that 40 plus area to really take advantage of this. I personally don't run many Khajiits, but as I said, they're very beneficial for bomb builds and gank builds and those kinds of things that just really want to get crazy amounts of damage. And, you know, the 12% healing on top of it is also very nice. All right, so they're, in my opinion, kind of the least interesting, even though, you know, Khajiit's still very used. But let's move on to some more interesting races. All right, next up we have Breton. Now, personally, I think Breton's took a little bit of a hit this patch, just in the way that the metas have been going. Breton is a fantastic race if you're using primarily all magic skills. But once you start getting into more of the hybrid area, there is better options. So if you're a mag sork or something like that that's using 90% mag skills, then Breton can still be an amazing option for you. That 7% reduced cost, the magic recovery, the 2k stats, and then obviously, you know, the 4.6k spell resistance you're getting is really solid. Basically, think of it that way. If you're primarily using all magic skills, Breton is good. If you're using more kind of along the lines of 50-50, or even if you're using 2 or 3 stamina skills, there is better option. Next up, Dark Elf there's not really much to say about it. You're getting 4k stats, flame resistance, and 335 weapon damage when you account for major weapon damage and resource buff and stuff. So it's a solid race, but in my opinion, I'm going to generally choose my recovery races over weapon damage. So that's maybe why I'm not so excited about it. And then we'll get into Argonian before we get into the race that I've spent the most time testing. So Argonian, I think, hasn't got as much value as it used to. So you're getting 1k stat, 6% healing, 136 recovery, and then obviously the poison and disease resistant. They used to be, now when I say 136 recovery, you might be going, they don't get recovery, but that's basically when you break down the passive, that's how much recovery it's equivalent to. So, you know, saying getting X amount of resources back every 45 seconds isn't something that people can easily understand. So we've broke it down into a number that people can digest and understand. So 136 recovery, that's health, stamina, mag. So yeah, that's why that number's there. Now, obviously, it's not exactly like recovery because you're getting it in a chunk instead of, you know, over time. But as I said, this just is a number that will help you guys understand what you're getting. Now, the two next races, I think, are kind of the most interesting. Now, I always thought Wood Elf was kind of behind a fair bit in regards to Imperial. But what we found in the testing was a little bit interesting. So obviously, Wood Elf, you're getting over 400 when you've got your resource buff, stamina recovery, 5% speed, 2k stats, 950 penetration. And then Imperial, 4k stats, and then 6% reduced cost. Now, we've actually broke this reduced cost down in a few different ways. Now, I added up all the cost of all my skills on my bar, divided it by how many skills I had on the bar to get an average skill cost, divided at 6% of that average cost, and then turned that into a resource number. So that worked out to be about 440 recovery. But this isn't necessarily that accurate because generally your spammables are cheaper and you're using them more. So taking the average cost of all the skills is basically saying that you're using the skills exactly the same amount of time, which isn't true. So this number in real life will be lower than the 440. So just keep that in mind. It's not higher than Wood Elf necessarily. So something else you need to think about too when you're comparing reduced cost and I think this is when people compare these two, reduced cost and recovery, they kind of forget about this fact. And the fact is, stamina recovery is always going to sit there and tick. No matter what, it's going to tick. Reduced cost is only good when you're actually casting skills. So in those 2-3 second downtimes that you may get in a fight, reduced cost isn't doing anything for you where recovery is constantly ticking. So keep that in mind. And then we went and did a whole lot of testing on a dummy and basically Wood Elf, same rotation over and over and over again. And then we did the same rotation on Imperial and we basically timed it. So it was basically how long could these classes or races, should I say, do the same rotation until they ran out of resources. And overall, the Wood Elf come out on top by a few percent. Depending, it was anywhere between 2% and about 8%, with an average of around 6 to 7% higher. Now, I do want to say that the rotation was all stam skills, so this highly benefited Wood Elf. And basically, okay, I'll sum it up for you guys, because we can sit here and talk about numbers all day long, but you guys want an answer, and this is the answer, all right? A little bit like Breden, if you're running a build that has primarily all stam skills, Wood Elf is the better option. If you're running a more of a hybrid build, which a lot of people are, Imperial is going to be a better option for you. So that's basically the easiest way I can sum it up. Also keep in mind Imperial is the best race right now for stamina mag. So if you're making a necro but you don't know if you want to play magic or stamina, then Imperial is going to serve you equally as well on both fronts. But yeah, boys and girls, I hope that breaking Imperial and kind of Argonian and some of the other stats down into a digestible stat made it a little bit easier for you guys to understand. Practically, I have about 7 Imperials on AU at the moment, so that's kind of been my go-to. Primarily because, one, I think it is one of the best races at the moment, and two, I don't want to have to swap races every time I decide to play a mag or a stam version of a class. But yeah, boys and girls, let me know what your feelings on this is. You know, some of it is, you know, that opinion. But at the end of the day, you can't kind of argue with the numbers. And hopefully I've gave you the straight facts for you to kind of make your own decision. Anyway, boys and girls, before we go, you may have noticed one race missing from this testing. Red Guard. Red Guard. What do I say about Red Guard? Oh, man. Okay, Red Guard's actually not as terrible as what people think it is. So we did do some testing with Argonian. I forgot to write the numbers down. That's why it's not in the spreadsheets. But it's actually not terrible. Like, it's obviously behind Wood Elf and Imperial, and it is behind. But if you're using a lot of, like, D-Swing Executioner or whatever, you're using quite a few weapon skills, it's actually not that terrible. It is still bad and still a joke and still needs to be buffed, but it isn't awful. And I think this is something that I do want people to take out of this as well. If you are, say, a Wood Elf and you've watched this video and gone, oh, god damn it, I want to be an Imperial, just know it's not that big of a difference. Like, races used to be kind of game breaking. Like, if you had a stam race on a mag build, you were kind of buggered. Like, it was a big thing. And for especially for PvP, you're generally using both your stat pools anyway. So if you do have a mag, like even say you're bred on a stam build, yeah, it's not ideal, but it's not game breaking. And, you know, don't stress out about it is all I want to get the point across. It's not necessarily that bad. And then, you know, out of the main races, the differences are minuscule and aren't game breaking. All right, boys and girls, I hope that helped. I will catch you in the next one. Don't forget, if you want to join our Discord, I'll have the link below. I stream every other day, and if you want to check out some of my merch, I'll have that link in the description as well. All right, boys and girls, love yous all. Peace.